But you see, when we get so caught up in that itch, we are looking for people to come along and scratch it. And if you're not careful, you'll run to get a scratch, and you'll like the way that scratch feels, and they'll keep scratching and scratching and scratching until there is a cut. And once there's a cut, that allows for that stuff to really seep in. And when it seeps in, you become infected. Once you have been infected, you are now in need of some serious medication. But here's the deal. You're not going to like the way the medicine feels. The best thing to put on a scratch that is starting to bleed is alcohol. Alcohol is going to burn. If you have a choice between the burning or just sitting there stinging, you'll choose the burn. I hope you'll choose the burn. Most people, they sit there because you know what happens after a while when you get a scratch? The pain starts to go away and a scab comes over. What's underneath the scab? That is what's going on in a lot of people's lives who've had their ears itching so bad that they could not stand to hear what the Bible was really telling them. So instead, they'd rather get the kind of teaching that's going to scratch them, make them feel good. Literally in the Greek, the word means tickle. You want to be tickled, entertained, get all emotional, walk out skipping. Now, here's something for you. The teachers, we're going to talk about them in just a second, but the teachers that do this, the Bible says they have a motive for scratching you. It's called gain. In other words, they'll scratch you for a price. You wouldn't believe this, but there are some out there that teach, that believe that this is a product that they are selling. And because it's a product that they're selling, they will modify it because the customer is always right. How do I know if I'm hearing the wrong thing? It's going to make you feel good all the time. Let's shut this down. Look at what he says here. They will heap up for themselves teachers. You see the words heap up? Y'all see that? Heap up. They will heap up for themselves teachers. The reason that we have false teachers is because of the believers. It's not the false teachers. We wouldn't have any if we didn't put up with it. It's because we don't like what we're hearing. So what we want to do is we want to gather together. That word heap means gather. We want to gather all of the false teachers that we can. We need somebody to come and scratch us. This is why when you look out over this so-called Christian world that we have, when you look at the church, this is why you have niches. Let me explain this to you. This ministry over here is about prosperity. This ministry over here is about healing. This ministry over here is about getting ahead in life. Niches. What ends up happening is you go to this one, you go to that one, and you go to that one. You find yourself at conferences. You find yourself buying all the books. You find yourself just eating this stuff up. You can't say anything about God without quoting Bishop so-and-so, Dr. so-and-so, Pastor so-and-so. Do you know anything for yourself? Can you not talk about God without saying Pastor Harris said? Please don't use my name. I could be wrong, or I could be right and you say it wrong. Leave me out of it. Verse 4, and they will turn their ears away from the truth. If you turn away from the truth, you are now in slavery. Y'all didn't see that? The truth shall set you free. If you turn away from the truth, you are now enslaved. This is pretty deep. This means if you don't like the truth, you're willing to be enslaved to a lie. Why? Because the lie makes you feel good. And oh, by the way, he said earlier that Jesus Christ was the judge in verse 1. Notice what he said. Who will judge the living and the dead. Now, the dead are the unsaved. That's the great white throne. He'll judge them there. The living are the same. When you go before God, you go before Jesus, you're not going to be able to say, oh, I got caught up in some bad teaching. You're not going to be able to do that. Because he's going to say, did you pick up the Bible for yourself? I made sure that there were plenty of copies. Have you not noticed there are more Bibles in the world than any other book? Do you think that's by chance? What language do you read? I have it in every language. You have no excuse. None whatsoever. You're not going to be able to argue. Well, Pastor Harris said. He's going to say, who is Pastor Harris? A sinner saved by grace, just like you. As fallible as you are. Matter of fact, your education was better than his. You're not going to be able to get around this. You have to understand that if you're not careful, you're going to end up scratching that itch. So at the end of verse 4, and we'll sit down here, he says, and be turned aside to fables. Anybody ever read Mother Goose? Who in their right mind would take a nursery rhyme and use that to live your life by? Who would do that? But what he says here is that when you begin to scratch your itch with these false teachers, what you're actually doing is starting to live your life by fairy tales. Oh, by the way, fairy tales don't come from people that claim that they are giving you fairy tales. They come from people that claim, for whatever reason, that they are somehow right. You listen to talk radio in the afternoon on your way from work. If you listen very carefully, if it has nothing to do with the Bible, what you're hearing is a fairy tale. Some of y'all are like, what are you talking about? Y'all know me, I'm not bashing, I won't call out any names, but there's some very popular DJs that like to talk about a lot of stuff on the radio. And you know how I know y'all are listening? Because half the time I get emails from you asking me, did you hear what so-and-so said today? And you're listening, and you're saying to yourself, it's entertaining. Oh, and by the way, what they're saying, it sounds like it might be right. Why is it what we hear over the radio, on television, the stuff that we gravitate to, why is it so anti-Christian? And why do we keep on gravitating in that direction?